Hey everybody, welcome one and all. How's everybody doing today? Hello, welcome to a new pep talk. Excuse me for sounding so squeaky. I've been a little under the weather, but excited to talk to you guys about reviving abandoned stories today. Hello. How many of you guys have a trunk story that you are trying to get through? Maybe you've thought about bringing it back for the AutoCrit Novel 90 challenge. We got a lot of people on. Hello. Am I allowed to talk today? Yes. Uh, we do try. So, not the only one with, let's see here. Hey, Luna. Hey, Terry. All right. So, let me go ahead and get going here. Good to have you all on. So, we're going to be talking about reviving abandoned projects today. Specifically, if you haven't heard the term trunk project before, a trunk project is when you started writing a story and you were really in love with the story and you wrote it for a while. And then after a while, you just sort of walked away. The story could be abandoned because you lost inspiration. It could be abandoned because life came and hit hard. And then before you knew it, years had passed and it never got done. It could be because you got another motivation for something else or a deadline for something else that had to be done first. But whatever the case is, we have come back to this story. We're going to pick it back up. And I'm going to be sharing some tips of my own with you guys today as the queen of abandoned stories on things to consider when reviving them and what to do to get them back off the ground and fall in love with them again and make sure that they get the happily ever after the ends that they um, deserve, right? Oh, thank y'all so much for caring and for all the well wishes. I really do appreciate it. All right, so let's dive in. How do we revive our abandoned stories? First, I want to ask you guys what inspired your story? The story you're writing right now, the abandoned one we're talking about. What made you want to write it? Something made you want to write it, right? I know with me, a lot of my trunk stories are inspired by dreams. And I have this dream and I want to know what happens next. So I wake up in the morning and I start furiously jotting stuff down. I have no idea where the story's going to be. Because it was a dream, it's usually in the middle of the story somewhere. So I don't know how it began. I don't know who these characters necessarily are. I don't know how it ends. But me being a pantser, I just dive full on into the story and continue writing scenes until I get to how the story ends, right? For planners and planters, maybe that kind of thing would inspire you to write an outline or fill out a beat sheet, right? But before we can talk about really reviving our stories in full, we need to talk about what inspired it. We need to grab hold of the why we wrote it to begin with. So, a dream and a necklace for Terry. Your story from Novel 90 is a trunk novel from a dream. Yay, came from you. Started and life got in the way, never let it go. Mine came from college and wanting to be a novelist. There you go. So something made us want to write these stories. We got to remember why. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in just a second. So once you have your why, you remember what did inspire me to write this to begin with. We can then accept the fact that since we started, there have been changes. If you're reviving an abandoned story, it likely has something to do with change of some capacity. Change happens to all of us, it happens to everyone. The more drastic the change we go through, like losing a job, getting married, having kids, going through illness, moving to a new home, finishing school, going back to work in a physical office, the longer it's going to take to complete that first draft. And it becomes this big cycle because the longer it takes to complete your first draft, the more changes we then experience as people. The more we change as people, the more we change how we view the world, how we view characters, how we view plot, and we become sort of a different person from when we first started writing it, right? So for me, with the truck novel that I am finishing up, that is coming out later this year, I started writing this piece. The majority of the books that I've been publishing lately were pieces that I wrote in high school initially, or at least wrote a big part of. In that time, I finished high school. I went to college. I finished college. I've traveled a lot internationally, one little stamp away from 10 visits to Japan on my little punch card. I got married. I had 2 kids. I worked several jobs. I have now been an editor and worked editing for people for a really long time. And that process has made me a better writer as well. And I've read a lot more books and I've gotten more connected with this community. So the Katherine who first started drafting a piece that I wrote at age 13 or 14 is not the same Katherine who is sitting down today trying to publish a piece for readers in 2025. Yeah, it's been so long ago that you may not remember all of the changes that you had, right? Life got in the way. Had 50K finished, picking it back up. Um, it just popped into your head and wouldn't go away. So think about the changes. And why I'm asking you to think about the changes? Because thinking about your changes will help you understand the differences in the worldview, the values you have as a person, and your dreams. And that lets you decide how your project has been impacted. If past you was super positive and optimistic and the world was your oyster, and then life hit you like a train wreck, and here you are 15 or 20 years later, I'm 20 years post teenage Katherine writing this, 20 years later, you're looking back at this piece going, if only you knew what the world was really like. Then you have to account for that when you pick it up. That your book is not going to sound the same if you write it from today's view as it did when you first started it, because your view of the world has changed. The values that you have in life may have changed. The dreams you're going after as a writer, as a person, might have changed. So with that change in mind, we now have 3 choices to make here. You can't always control the change in life, but you can control your stories. And so here is a good example. You are in control. This is your story. To like channel my inner Alice in Wonderland for a second. This is your dream, and you can make it be whatever you want to be. You have choices as to whether revive this story by adapting it, by pushing through your original vision for it, or by starting over entirely. So, what are you looking at getting into if you do any of these 3 choices? Well, first off is adapt. If you decide you want to adapt the story, then you are looking at keeping the bones of the story the same, the theme of the story, the same core characters, the same core plot, but you're going to shift them to accommodate some of these new beliefs and worldviews that you didn't originally have when you were first writing the book. So you're not going to start all over from scratch with a blank page. You're going to keep a lot of this stuff that you've worked out, but you're going to update it. You're going to majorly revise it. If you're going to push through this piece, we're going to break each of these down a little more here in a second, but if you're going to push through the piece to revive your abandoned project, then you are going to try to get back in old you's head enough to cross the end finish line on your story. And then if you want to start all over, you're going to decide what core elements you really loved about this piece that can inspire an entirely new book, and walk away from the old version in order to make a newer, stronger, freer, more professional version here to begin with. So let's start with adapting. If you choose to adapt your piece, which is what many people do when they first come back to a trunk novel or an abandoned story, you should probably consider rereading it. While you're rereading it, though, there are specific things that you should be looking for in the piece. So, what was the core theme of the story when you dropped it off? Is it love conquers all? There's a chosen one who can save the world. Somebody can see that love is just trivial and passing and it's not real. Like, what was your original theme for this story? Which of your characters that you wrote back then still resonate with you? They're still believable. You still like them versus the cringy characters, and we all have them. You don't have to feel bad. The cringy characters that you go, ooh, that was a stereotypical character. I really should have written that one with more sensitivity. I should have been better. Why is that character even there? That all they literally do is drive them around and cook for them. The character needs depth. Which of your characters still resonate? You still like? Does the plot still make sense to you? Or now that you've stepped away from this piece for a while and you're coming back, do you see tons of holes in the piece that need to be resolved? Does the plot have an easy out? Do you look at it and go, oh, well, I could have just had this solve the problem to begin with, and now I have to revise the whole thing, right? Is the world building that you used at that time immersive? Does it put you in the scene, let you know what's going on, and anchor you there? Or was it sort of left off the side like me? I tend to write plot and characters and dialogue in those old books and leave world building out. So I have to come back and think, what was the setting? What was the culture? What would you change about the above points going into the adapting phase of your piece? And so these are all different elements you could get. Just keep track of them while you're reading through, or you could use a tool like AutoCrit's Backwards Blueprint that can read your story in minutes and help you plug in an outline with what you've already written, identify characters for you and their strengths and weaknesses and all of that. If you're interested in learning more about that, we have an entire series of free classes here on YouTube called AutoCrit 101. I'll drop the link here for you guys, and it's also going to be linked in the description box under the video if you're watching the replay. But go to AutoCrit 101. There's a video there about reverse outlining, and the whole point of reverse outlining is to save yourself the time when seeing what you've already written in a book and what still has to be written. This can help just sort of anchor you with what you have. Don't be discouraged if it's not perfect. Past you could have walked away from this book 20 plus years ago, and now you're coming back to it, and that's okay. Don't make past you bear the burden of knowing what current you knows. They are two separate people. You can fix it all in post. So essentially, for the adapting, we're going to reread. We're going to figure out what we were writing, what we still like, and then we can shift and change the details that we don't like. If we don't like the theme that true love conquers all anymore, sorry, Princess Bride fans, then we need to adjust how characters interact, the choices the characters make, and that will then affect the plot. So give your story permission, if you're going this adapt route, to let the story become whatever it needs to be. Our second choice here, if you prefer, is to push through, especially if you're close to the end of a piece and you're not here in the beginning or halfway through, you're a couple chapters away from where you originally intended to end it. There is a valid point for allowing a piece to be a representation of who you were and what your dreams were before you learned the craft that you know now, before you started doing what you're doing today, before you had these experiences. I view some of my trunk books as precious pieces of what life and dreams were for me as a kid. And I don't plan on publishing them. I don't plan on revising them. I don't plan on making them public. Those pieces are for me, for the moments when life feels too heavy to bear, to go back and pick up a book from someone who looked at the world through rose-colored lenses and wasn't writing grim, dark, epic fantasy, okay? There's just something refreshing about that. If you say you have an inner child, maybe I consider mine, because mine was writing, as being reflected in these books. So maybe you want to push through the book just to say it's done and to get the weight off your shoulders and say, I did it. It's done. I was true to past me's vision, and now I'm free to write better and bigger things, right? So if you'd like to push through as is, then you need to re-enter the headspace that past you was living in at that time. Otherwise, your piece is going to feel very obviously like two separate people wrote it, and it's going to be jarring. Some tips to get back into past you's head are going to be things like getting back into the music or video games or movies or books that you loved when you were at the peak of writing this story. If you're in push through, that means you're probably close to the end. So at that time, what were you into? What was life like? Try to get back into that emotional mood. Try to put yourself back in that headspace. Try to think about what things were like before you gained the experiences you have. Reread the piece and note what you paid attention to. Were you paying attention to character interactions and dialogue? Because that means you were a very character and relationship focused person at that time. How can you take that and work that into the end of the book and not shift away into plot or world building too much? Stay true to your original theme if you're going to do the push through route instead of the adapt route, and to your characters. If you had a character who had a quirky tendency, like running their hand through their hair, let them run their hand through their hair, even if today you would roll your eyes and think that that's cliched. Because again, the push through method is not necessarily adapting. The push through is to achieve a finish line of the end so that we free ourselves up to write more pieces. And we give ourselves the win of saying, you know what? I can finish something. If your abandoned piece is abandoned because past you said, you can't do this, you're not qualified to do this, you're not good enough, your story's not worthy, pushing through says, you know what? This wasn't the best thing I could come up with, but I finished it. So now I show you that I can finish whatever the heck I want. And now I'm going to write something even better. And that fuels you on your journey. So reread the piece and stay true to that theme. You have pages and notes of things you want to change and update. Most of it's the beginning, and that'll be a problem for August. There you go. See, if you're at the beginning, absolutely, that adapt one that we just went through might be a better fit for you. It could definitely 100% be hard to get back into the character's voice if you've been away. Read over what you have. If you write something new, and do character interviews, yes, I love character interviews. You can get back in their head a little more easily. All right, so we've got one last choice here that we're going to work through. Starting over. This is the cringe part for a lot of us, especially as pantsers. Um, if you are a planner, your first go to with reviving an abandoned project might be to bulldoze the entire thing and start over from scratch, because planners tend to have in their editing process this mentality that if the first draft wasn't perfect, it's because the outline wasn't perfect. Therefore, I have to continue starting over. The fallacy in that ideology is that you will never have a perfect first draft. They don't exist. Don't hold yourself to an impossible standard. You do not have to bulldoze everything to make a good book when you get to editing. That is what editing is there for. So instead, if you're thinking of starting over, I feel like starting over should be because you have to let them go in order for the story to grow to be true to your current values, your current themes. There's nothing salvageable about the way you originally meant to write this story. You can't get back in the head space. You do not want to. Maybe something happened. It's traumatic to get back in that headspace. Whatever the case is, that part of you is gone, but the story's still worth telling, just not the way you intended. When this comes up, keep the original version. Start a whole new fresh file and start a fresh outline, planners and planters. Start from the beginning. Just let this be a one-time thing. Don't get stuck in a revising cycle. Analysis paralysis, I think, is what Kat Campbell talked about last night on the kickoff. But keep yourself grounded to finishing this. Once you start over, take what you really, really loved, the really core detail of this story, make it true to who you are today. Make it a clean break, make it 100% fresh. Don't scrap a story and use an old outline, because you'll end up sort of subconsciously trying to rewrite the version you already had, which is not what you want. Also, let the story explore new paths. Let characters end up with people you didn't plan if that's where they end up deciding to go. Ask yourself through your new lens, not what you originally intended, what is best for the story and what is best for the people. So we've got our starting over here. Remember, it does not equal failure to start over. Sometimes you just have to let it go to let it grow. So coming back to our summary, you have 3 choices sitting here. One is adapt. You might have a lot of good that you like, and you're going to change it and update it and bring your current beliefs into it. One would be push through, get back in the headspace. You're trying to just finish up the last couple chapters, the last few chapters of a piece, and then write the end and chalk it up as you being able to do it. And start over is, I cannot get back in this headspace. There is no way I can finish this the way I meant, but the story has good details. I'm going to start over and make something fresh and new about it. All right. Finally, here, sometimes we all need help. I am an editor, I'm a professional editor for a living, but even I have a professional editor. I have beta readers. I don't send my books out for dev editing anymore. I use AutoCrit to self-edit my work on a developmental level for plot and pacing and characters and things like that. But I do have human beta readers, and I have 2 of them that read almost every single thing that I write, so that I can get a human touch on things that I might have overlooked, especially with my abandoned pieces that I'm reviving, because nobody knows current me's writing style like Maddie and Fu, who read all of my stuff. And so I can send to them and go, hey, what do you think of this? And they will tell me quite honestly if it's a hot mess. If you need professional beta readers, developmental editors, trusted critique partners, or peers to help you get through a hurdle, that community is a very important detail for reviving abandoned work. If you get to a spot in the story where it's just not moving on anymore and you loved everything until then, maybe consider dropping that scene in the writers group that you're in. Like AutoCrit Pro members have pro member community forums. Consider dropping it there and go, I just can't get past this scene. Something about it feels off. What are your thoughts? And get some open, honest feedback. Remembering that you don't have to do everything that people give you advice to do, but it can help to get outside of your head and see that maybe you had something that was blocking you that had a different workaround that you just didn't see past, because in your mind, this is how it had to work out, right? So even editors need editors. We really, really do. All right. So I know that we've had a lot to talk about. If you have questions, let's chat about it. What are you going to do with your abandoned projects? Are you thinking you're going to adapt them? You going to go ahead and push through on them? You're going to start over? Rewatching and revisiting the pieces that inspired you for this story. That's great. Really need to go back and watch last night's. Replays should post in about 24 hours. Novel 90 people. Go to Basecamp. You can grab it there. Expanding your 1,200 word thriller competition. Story from last year into a 3,000 word holiday horror story. Nice. Have a few you'll adapt. Talk to someone. A friend of yours who's also an author tells you it's a hot mess. When it comes to editing, we don't need necessarily someone who's only going to tell us all the great things. It's nice to know what we're doing well, especially if it's given in an actionable way. Like, I loved this opening chapter because of insert reasons. Now you know what it was that was so good about it, and you can repeat that in future books, right? But we also need that objective, honest, negative criticism to help us grow through the things that could have been better at the same time, right? Your rebranding, staying true to the Christmas novella that started it all. We're going to adapt. We're going to adapt them. Already read through and came up with an idea for a new middle. That's fantastic. Oh, I love that. Once you get started, you're good, but restarting is the problem. Yep. All right. So, my challenge to you, if you are reviving an abandoned story, whether that be for the AutoCrit Novel 90 challenge that's running right now, which is free, anybody could join that if you'd like to get a piece done to the end. And we just kicked off writing phase today. So, hooray for happy writing phase. Whether you're doing it for Novel 90 or you're doing this for yourself, I encourage you to take a moment and sit down and be honest with yourself. If you can't be honest with anybody else, be honest with yourself and look at that story and go, do I really have it in me to finish this story the way I originally wanted to write it? Nice little self gut check there. Get yourself some coffee or tea or root beer and sit down and look yourself in the eyes of the mirror and think about this piece, because books are an investment. Getting back into something after a lot of things have changed in life is it's tough. It's an investment of our emotions, not just our time. It's our emotional and mental well-being. Do you have it in you to finish this? If not, I want you to let yourself know that it is okay to let it be, to start over, to move on to a whole new project if you need to, but that you can revive this piece by making it something new. You can recycle the idea and come out with a gorgeous new book that is, at its essence, what you were originally inspired to write, but different than maybe how you would have originally gone about it. It is not failure. You can also take what you have and adapt it. You can take what you have and push through with it. But you have to be on the same level with yourself. Oh, I love that. And revive the abandoned story competition. Pushing through for now. You'll get back to them. Two that you trunked. Yeah. So be honest with yourself. I allow myself to have pieces that are in the trunk and that I know will always be there. I have over 100 books in a very literal, physical tub that I keep in my house, and they are notebooks. And some of them I've dug it out and I've completely revised into something new, and they have been published. Splitting Knot is one of those. Some of them I have dusted off and adapted, but kept more or less the same and put them out that way. And some of them I'm just going to let sit there for now because those are not quite ready for their writing time. So you can use this reverse outlining idea to take a look at it and be honest with yourself. Your book's going to feel forced if you don't have the inspiration to write it. So if you do try the push through method, try to really get back in the head and the goals and the aspirations of the you who is writing it so that you don't run into that wall. And Becca has some great tips on defeating imposter syndrome, coming up with routines if you don't like routines, here in our pep talks as well that you can go check into. All right, everybody. Well, it's been great touching base with you this beautiful Tuesday. I hope you have a great rest of your week. Please, if you're in Novel 90, feel free to text your coaches. If you have questions, you're trying to push through this stuff, we wish you the best of luck in your writing phase. And we'll see you all next week. Bye, everyone.